Welcome. Today we're joined by Baroness Cox, a member of the British House of Lords since 1982. She is also the founder and CEO of the Humanitarian Aid Relief Trust. Baroness Cox's name is synonymous with the Karabakh conflict. She's been a diligent observer and avid promoter of peace. Baroness Cox, thank you very much for your time.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me to be with you in these very, very difficult and sad days. I would just like to assure you that what is happening in Artsakh is the source of prayers and concern and as much political leverage as we can apply in our country. And I would also just like to say, as I always say, if you've heard me speak before, you have heard me say it again, that we who are not Armenians must say a big thank you to you for holding that precious front line of faith and freedom for the rest of the world. We are indeed very, very humble and very grateful and as supportive as we can be.
Well, we really appreciate that. And to start off, I'd like to ask you, what is your perception? What do you think about this 2020 Nagorno-Karabakh war?
Well, I think it is absolutely tragic, of course. And when you see the film footage of what's happening in Stepanakert, it reminds you of what it was like when I was there in 1990-91, when there were 400 Grad missiles a day pounding in on Stepanakert from Shushi above, and it looks horribly familiar. And of course, this time we know that Azerbaijan is helped by Turkey and has a lot of very sophisticated weaponry. And we've also been told that possibly up to thousands of jihadists have been brought in by Turkey from Syria, Libya, and transported to Azerbaijan. So clearly it's a very, very big challenge. And we watch this space with great interest, great concern, and would love to hear from anyone, from you people on that front line, what we can do to help, or if there's any further news that doesn't come to the BBC or other news channels, such as any attacks by Turkey or Azerbaijan on Armenia itself, because that is a very serious breaking of international conventions. Karabakh, as we know, sadly, is a disputed territory, but Armenia is a sovereign nation, and Turkey and Azerbaijan must be held to account for that, as well as the brutal violations of human rights in Artsakh itself.
Well, you first took interest in the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict in the early 90s, and you condemned the blockade that was imposed. Why did you take an initial interest in this situation, in the conflict, and speak out in support of the inhabitants of Artsakh?
Well, when I was appointed to the House of Lords, it's a great privilege. I wasn't into politics. I was the first baroness I'd ever met. But I asked God how to use this privilege. And the message came very clearly: to speak in the British Parliament is a wonderful place to be a voice for those who do not have a voice, or have voices whose voices are not heard. So we do work with Humanitarian Aid Relief Trust, or HART, for people suffering from oppression, persecution, war, and conflict whose voices on the whole are not heard. And I originally became involved because I've been doing quite a lot of work in Poland and Russia, and I was invited by Sakharov, of course, known to all Armenians, to speak at a conference she was organizing in memory of what would have been Andrei Sakharov's 70th birthday. And I was chairing a meeting, and there was someone who's known to all of you, Zori Balayan, and he spoke with passion about what had already begun in the war with Operation Ring. And I was deeply, deeply concerned. He gave a lot of details, and I reported that to the full conference, and they asked if I would lead a delegation down to Armenia to verify the situation, see the suffering of the people. And we did actually cross the border a bit illegally into Azerbaijan to hear both points of view, because you won't get Western media coverage if you only put one point of view. So that was how I became involved with Zori Balayan, and I've been there many times with him and seen the suffering of your people. And it breaks my heart, because having endured all that suffering and rebuilt your land so beautifully, with your new cathedral, with your very big quality housing, particularly for people who were homeless, and the rehabilitation center by Vardan Petrosyan, which was internationally recognized as a center of excellence. To think that all that may be under threat now is a source of immense sadness.
One of the significant things about this time round is Turkey's involvement. Will that impact the way that the UK and other European and Western governments respond to this crisis? Do you think it will make them less likely to engage with the situation? Moreover, I would ask that people have called this in a way a civilizational front, but there is a sort of lack of support in many ways to the Armenian side, whereas Azerbaijan has had voices of support from Turkey, Pakistan, and many other countries. What do you think about this?
Well, I think it's very sad and very disturbing. One thing I would say is I think it's very important for Armenia, and for those of us who are concerned about what is happening to you, to broadcast very, very loudly the right the Armenians have to be in Artsakh. Turkey and Azerbaijan are always saying they're occupied territory, they're getting back occupied territory. Well, you will know there is a very good justification for the Armenians being in Artsakh. And I do think that point needs to be made very, very forcefully through the press, because many people otherwise will believe that Azerbaijan and Turkey are fighting a just war, which they're not, and we know that, but people need to be told why it is not a just war, that the Armenians have every right, both historically, but also the political aspects, like vote for self-determination and so on, to be there, and to kill that lie that's being propagated, which justifies the attack by Azerbaijan and Turkey on Artsakh. So my real priority would be to get that message across through the media to the major world.
Mm. Well, it's been 30 years since the initial Nagorno-Karabakh war, and people forget that this conflict began because of a struggle for human rights. You were there in the early 90s, and you concluded that the inhabitants of Nagorno-Karabakh were being mistreated by Azerbaijan. Could you speak a bit about this?
Indeed, I often reported that Azerbaijan committed war crimes, crimes against humanity in so many ways. I visited the village of Meraham after that had been attacked by Azeri military, and I saw the burned homes, and worse still, I saw that they dug up for us, which is difficult for Armenians to do, the corpses of civilians who'd been killed and beheaded, and I saw their corpses and the proof of a massacre against civilians, which is absolutely, well, totally unacceptable. I was there, as I say, when 400 grad a day were pounding in on civilians in Stepanakert. I brought back photographs of children who'd been shredded by cluster bombs, and I brought the photos back. And I actually asked at that time the senior person in the Foreign Office if the Foreign Office or Britain would make representation to Azerbaijan, because that is a violation of international conventions. And I'm afraid the answer I got from a very senior person was no country has an interest in other countries, only interests. We have oil interests in Azerbaijan. Good morning. I'm not giving away secrets, because I've spoken about that in Parliament. It's on the record. But that is really disturbing when interests take precedence over human rights and justice. And I hope that this particular war will not be influenced by interests, but by justice, human rights, and humanitarian concerns, and particularly on the offensives and outright slaughtering of civilians, which is unacceptable and is totally unjustified, because they have every right to be there.
Well, in this current climate, what can someone like you do, and what are you doing in Parliament and outside Parliament, and what sorts of responses are you getting?
Good question. I'm vice chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Armenia, and we've written a very powerful letter signed by the members of the All-Party Parliamentary Group. Tim Loughton, MP, is the chair, and that has gone to Dominic Raab. I hope it will have some effect. I've tried to speak 3 times, and I don't know if the next one will work, but I've not been able, have not been given an opportunity to speak on the subject in Parliament. I put down what we call a private notice question last week, which was not accepted. Then someone else asked a topical question, question time, and they have a ballot for people who can ask supplementaries. I was not selected. I asked for another private notice question yesterday, was not selected, and I put in to speak at another topical question tomorrow. I don't know if I'll be accepted or not. But if the Armenians are wondering why I've not been speaking in Parliament, I'd love them to know that I am trying, but so I've not been given the opportunity. But we are writing, we're speaking very broadly in the, well, to our followers to people who we know are interested in this, and we've sent them out briefings which have given all the background. So we have got the message out, but if they wonder about my silence in Parliament, so far I've tried without success. Maybe I'll get success tomorrow.
And successive UK governments have been closely allied with Turkey. And it seems that the UK is one of the European countries that has been not particularly vocal when it comes to a lot of Turkey's policies in not only Armenia, but other countries, other neighboring countries. Do you think that the UK government is forfeiting a responsibility in a way to speak up about this and prioritizing the benefits it gets from its close relationship with Ankara?
Well, we press the UK government to do what we think is the right thing to do in terms of human rights, justice, and the violation of human rights. And we watch this space.
Absolutely. Well, Baroness, thank you very much for your time.
Well, thank you for the privilege of speaking at these very, very tragic times. And please do accept our message of love for your people, of profound respect for your people, and as our prayers that you will have the resistance you need to this horrendous aggression by Azerbaijan and Turkey. And my plea that you will make it known worldwide that the Armenians do have a historic and political right to be in Artsakh, and that Turkey and Azerbaijan are not correct in validating their assaults because of the illegal presence of Armenians in their land. It's very important to get that truth known, and that will, I think, help the understanding of the situation, and I hope more support for Armenia and Artsakh.
Thank you again, and we appreciate all the work you do.